Hey everybody, this is Ryan and welcome to Creating and Packing Out Retreats. Take your students deeper than they've ever gone before. This is definitely one of my favorite trainings. So let's look at the benefits. And this is definitely looking at retreats from the 30,000 foot view up. But the goal of a yogi is simply to quiet the mind. It is in doing this that our true nature is revealed. And one of my favorite quotes of all time is, "To the mind that is still, the whole universe surrenders," Lao Tzu. So at the start of a yoga practice, we experience this in small glimpses by simply attending yoga classes. But, as time marches on, we realize that we are doing the equivalent of almost a reverse bunny hop, that for every one step we take forward with the practice of yoga, we take 2 steps back as soon as we leave the yoga mat, and return to the chaos that defines daily life for many. So, the benefits going into that is you remove many of the external distractions in your students' lives. This is where a yoga retreat can be powerful and a transformational tool because you are removing those external distractions. And we have the opportunity to go much deeper, much, much deeper into the practice, as well as create community. Why your students truly stick around as community, and deepen the relationships you have with your students individually. So similar to workshops, in many ways planning a retreat is much like planning a workshop, in that the experience really should conform to the basic principles of pedagogy, and which we discussed really in the workshop training of matching not only the mind but also with the body, and making sure that they're constantly not only learning, using the mind, but also getting into the body and really seeing that on a physical level, really actually bringing the lessons inside. So do yourself a favor. I love this smiley face. Do yourself a favor. Go on a retreat. Do it. Here's the reason why I say this, is because, and you could do the same thing with the workshop. You go in order to be a participant and take it and see it through the eyes of a participant. Whether it's a 3-day, retreat that you go to or a week retreat, this is an opportunity for you to really see what it's like to be a participant again and be more mindful of that. And take notes of what you would do if you were actually teaching. What can you really learn from that experience? And, of course, it's going to continue to ground you in the practice, honoring yourself. I just want to say that I continually hear again and again that teachers, aren't honoring their own bodies. And listen, I'm not here to say you should do something. You should do this. You should do that. We're all shoulding on ourselves enough. It's turning the shoulds in our lives to could. I could practice more. I could, in the sequence, be a better teacher. I could meditate. I could go for a run. I could eat better. So there gives more space to that. So again, I know that went off a little deep there, but the point that I'm trying to say is just honor your practice, continue to stay rooted in your practice. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later on, is that is incredibly important as you go through the retreat. Because when you are teaching, most teachers don't understand that, never been on a retreat. It can be a lot of work. You really are the sounding board for people a lot of times going through a lot of emotions because they've gone deeper than they've ever gone before. I'm glad I'm talking about this with a smiley face on the screen. But this is key. This is definitely key, and we'll get into this a little bit later on. So right now, when leading a retreat, remember that your job is much bigger than simply leading a couple of yoga classes. You're taking on a role as a tour guide into the depths of the human heart and mind. Make sure you're prepared for people to release emotions, face difficult issues, and let go of a lot of long-held patterns that are no longer serving them. So, facilitating this experience requires total compassion attentiveness, and being personally grounded. So make sure that, before leading retreat, that you remain strong in your own practice. And, as a whole, just makes you a better teacher when you take care of yourself. So mindful of this process, that each student will likely go through. Never forget that your presence at the retreat is to hold space rather than go on your own vacation. Now, it still can be a lot of fun. A lot of fun. Trust me, it can be amazing. But, it is work. So you also have to take time to honor, again, yourself. So questions to answer. Which population do I want to offer this retreat to? Not all yoga students are the same. Some have money, others not so much. So some are going to be drawn more to a plush retreat, while others appreciate camping or staying in modest, 2 or 3 star. Knowing your audience will help you answer many of the questions that follow, in this training. So each group will have its unique needs. It's important that you consider this before you rush off and rent a retreat center. So again, we want to be grounded through this whole practice, and we're having realistic expectations. I'm not saying to not dream big. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying just be rooted in reality, grounded during this practice of putting something like this together. So the next big question is, where will the retreat be held? Which seems like a simple question, but it's probably the most important one. So choosing the right venue for the type of retreat you're going on is essential. An example is if your audience is wealthy housewives, they're probably going to want a spa-like experience that offers massages and facials and a hot tub, really nice pool. On the other hand, if your group consists of a lot of college students that are on a limited budget, this is a venue that's more for modest, more affordable accommodations like camping or dorm rooms. So really, again, tapping into your following and where they're going to want to go. So another important consideration is huge is the yoga room. This picture actually is from Blue Spirit, where I've held many retreats. And yeah, it's breathtaking. I'll tell you a quick story real quick. His name will remain nameless. He's one of my best friends to this day. But he was participating at the retreat, and I didn't have the heart to tell him at first. But he kept saying, "Oh my God, there's my spirit animal," because he thought they were, hawks just continually flying by, and it is beautiful. Don't get me wrong, it's absolutely gorgeous. Like, not only the scenery, but also with the birds flying by. And so it was the last day of the retreat, and we were on the beach, and my friend, he looked down and he goes, "You got to be kidding me." And the reason he said that was because they were actually turkey vultures. So, funny moment. So anyways, another important consideration is, again, the yoga room. Because if you plan to teach props, that's say it's an intensive restorative class, you want to make sure that the center has all the props that you need, which can be a pain in the butt to bring your own. Trust me on that. So if you like to teach with music, what's the sound system like? That's obviously going to be important to you. Now, how many people can fit in the yoga room? This is another big question. I mean, this room right here actually was all windows around the whole thing, and you could probably fit about 75 to 100 people actually in that classroom. Really cool story, actually, just real quick, is Icona. Aykana, look them up. Beautiful music, absolutely beautiful music. It's a husband and wife, and they played live for us actually while we did through the retreat, through all of the asana practices, and it was just absolutely amazing. Now, is there a way to adjust the temperature according to the type of yoga that you teach? If you're a Bikram yoga teacher or just a hot yoga teacher, then you want to obviously have that. There's certain things that you need to ask to prepare for ahead of time. So what lodging will be available? So this is a good general rule of thumb, is that retreats that offer a wider variety of accommodations are much easier to fill. And, I mentioned Blue Spirit earlier. What they offer is, really anything from camping, literally like there's already tents there, they're already on platforms, to ocean view suites, and they're absolutely amazing. So you could be looking at a difference of, I think it's maybe $1,000 difference. So it went from like 2,400 to about 3,500, from camping all the way up into the ocean retreat. So the retreat center, often offers, a wider, the more that they offer a wider variety, then again, you can get a bigger range of people at different income levels. And so filling up the retreat is much easier. It's not just one choice accommodations. So huge. Who will provide the food? The way to a yogi's heart is through the stomach. There's a reason there's an exclamation point, and this is underlined. If the food is good, you can almost botch up everything else, and people will still be happy. But if the food is bad, holy hell, it doesn't matter how teaching your flawless is, people are going to leave feeling miserable. Seriously. So sometimes the retreat centers that you rent, they'll provide the food, and sometimes you have to hire your own cook. If you end up getting a retreat, and I've had yoga teachers who had to rent cooks, and everything worked out fine. They just you have to do a little bit more work, but what's important is you need to hire a cook that can cater to your needs and your students' needs. The dietary restrictions. We all know. Well, if you don't know that yoga students tend to be healthier, and so a lot of them will be gluten-free, a lot of them will be dairy-free. Some of them will be vegetarian, some of them will be vegan. So you need to have a cook who can really, again, offer the different options. Now, how will the various activities and workshops work together to complement each other and achieve the goals of the retreat? So everything when you plan a retreat needs to be intentional. It's just, we always go back to the most important thing in your life is your intention. So getting really intentional about these retreats allow you to make them even more special. Now, of course, the most important thing is providing space, holding space, allowing the students to, reflect. And so the opening circle and the closing circle are like bookends. And, everything in between needs to be filled with a proper balance of yoga classes, workshops, and free time for personal reflection. Absolutely. People want their free time on retreats. So think about that. Every detail needs to be planned to take students deeper and deeper into whatever aspect of the yoga practice you are focusing on. Now, I do want to add to that again, as I mentioned with, is that you want to still remain open. Now, every detail, I take actually that point back. I do say that you need to have most of the retreat up to 75% planned out, but you want to allow the opportunities when students actually have questions or they have reflections to be able to go down that path if it feels like it's for the betterment of the group. That's why they say when you actually create like a coaching program, often you don't want to have it all completed, because your audience is going to tell you what they really want to learn. So, moving forward, each class, workshop, activity, the quotes you read, the chants you offer, even the free time are strategically planned to bring the students deeper and deeper. So, how will you develop a sense of community in a safe space? Huge topics. So some tips, learn everyone's name. This is definitely a big one. What is the most important name to that person? The most important word in the whole universe? Their first name. So learn them. Encourage everybody else to learn them as well. Fun name games are a great way to accomplish this. It sounds, silly, but it's true. Learn people's names. It's just a way of, making it even more special. So allow participants to help out if they want to. If they want to help out. Even if people have really simple jobs to do, they feel more connected to the group. Maybe that's their way of doing karma yoga. So definitely do what you can to allow people just to help out. So facilitate trust-building exercises such as partner yoga poses. This invites people to they have to establish some trust. You're getting someone in someone's personal space. And, again, this is the next thing I would go into is probably one of the biggest ones here is require confidentiality. And that sets the tone. One of the first things that you want to add, when sitting down with your group is that, that a priority for you, main priority, is to create a safe space for them. And by, sharing with the group that it's really important to keep that confidentiality, that's a great way to just set the tone for the retreat. So the refund policy, this is, get this right. Definitely get this right. And before I go into this one, I just want to add that, setting very clear boundaries is really important for your business. Even though it might stress someone to hear how you feel, at least they know how you feel. And now they know how to operate with that. A lot of times we hold back our truths because we're afraid of, hurting someone's feelings, and that's the thing we fear. And, by often fearing it, we're just attracting that into our experience. So being clear, even though that might initially hurt someone's feelings or whatever it may be, you're speaking your truth and you're laying your boundaries out there so that there's not miscommunication later on. One of the biggest things that for me in business is when people, don't communicate with me, that they leave emails unspoken and I'm supposed to just read between the lines. Yes, there's obviously a sense of wanting control, but often I think it's very clear, especially in regards to your refund policy and setting the stage for the retreat, that everyone has realistic expectations and they know your boundaries. So this one's really important. So inevitably plans do change and emergencies happen. People will sometimes register for your retreat and need to cancel. But, unlike a regular yoga class, a lot of cancellations can result in a loss of money for you. So it is for this reason that I recommend a no refund policy and make sure it is clearly stated. If there is a genuine emergency, it's up to you if you want to give a full refund or partial refund, but I would never guarantee this. And just like this training program, people must totally be committed. If you give them wiggle room, like, if this happens, you can get a refund. If this happens, you get a refund. They often will find a way to wiggle out. Some will take that. And that's honestly why I don't provide a refund for this training, because people need to be all in. When you're all in, you give it your all. I've learned this from experience. When I did offer a refund policy, it was often the people that didn't work the program, that didn't necessarily go through the training, all of it. And if they did, they went through just once, really the bare minimum. And then they didn't participate in the weekly calls, the weekly group calls. And it was just people that really didn't give a lot of effort. And these are the people who would try and wiggle out. Same type of individuals with a retreat. So don't give people that wiggle out room. Now, calculating the cost. So the cost per student, this is really important. Now, some of this is going to sound, I'm going to get into money. I'm just going to get into the money to really how much you can make as a yoga teacher on these retreats. Yes, square number one, you get an opportunity to go deeper with your students. But it is also an incredible way to make a great income doing it. And isn't that just a win-win situation? So anyways, the cost per student, that's your marketing. Food and lodging, represent a significant cost as well. So all these need to be factored into the overall cost price to the participant. The following chart, that I'm going to show you next shows a sample of what you might expect to pay per student, based on the lodging request. So you have camping. If you look on lodging, the first column, It says camping, dorm, basic room, deluxe room, and then you have what the rate is per night, the number of nights, and this is a weekend retreat. And I do recommend that you start out with a weekend retreat when you're doing this for the first time, because it's a lot less information to plan, and it's also a great way just to get your foot in the door in terms of retreats, so that your next logical step is, say, a week, internationally. So food is obviously a cost, and the marketing, and this we're going to get into this later on, what is your time worth? So then you have look at the total, calculating the cost. So paying yourself, these are important. Remember, a retreat is much more work than simply showing up to teach a yoga class. Obvious. There's a lot more work. There's a huge amount of time that goes into the writing of promotional material, registering participants, writing and sending out confirmation letters and arranging carpools, and all that is before the retreat even begins. So my recommendations, the more people in the retreat, the less you should take per student. And if there's 10 people, there's a lot more individual attention, more so than you're going to need if you have 20 people. They're going to require. So a weekend retreat, I would say you aim for $125 to $250 per student. International retreats, $250 to $750. But again, that's up to you. It's really, your audience, and I'm excited to give you guys, this seems like a lot, and I'm going to give you something at the end that's going to tie all this in, and you're going to be like, well, damn, Ryan, why don't you just tell me up front? Well, I want to go through all of this because I want you to get a sense of everything that's involved with retreats. Now, there's the blanks. You got to be kidding me. Okay, y'all, I found the slide. It was hiding on me. So, done for you retreat companies. Yeah, I know, I couldn't find the slide. So, here we go. This is your light at the end of the tunnel, the hallelujah. Done for you retreat companies. They do everything for you. They do all the carpooling. They do all of the planning the travel in terms of your hotel, in terms of your students, sending out the confirmation letters, everything. Everything is done for you. Now, the reason you're like, well, why do you tell me that in the beginning? Because I want you to understand that you can do it yourself. But I also want you to understand that you need to be able to understand everything that goes into this, so that you know everything that your student is going through as well. And that's why I highly recommend that you go on a retreat yourself. Highly recommend it. But the Done For You retreat companies, what they will do is they will take your list of students, you're following. And I actually recommend that you have about 200 people in your following before you try and plan a retreat. Now, some of you might be like, oh my God, I'm only like maybe half that or a quarter of that. Well, that's because you have not really put a lot of effort towards growing your list. I will say it, until somebody smacks me in the face, but where focus goes, energy flows. Putting your attention towards building your following and connecting with your students and working less and working smarter. Again, a lot of you are learning a new trade, which is really marketing. And hopefully you've seen through this process that there's a way to serve your clients through conscious and authentic ways by truly serving them, really honing in on who your perfect client is, who you love to work with. Well, we all know that if you love to work with someone, they're going to see better results. And now that you've toned into who your perfect client is, now all of your literature and everything that you put out is going to speak to that perfect client. They're going to show up for your workshops. That's what you're going to be building your list with. That's who you're going to be doing your private clients with, and those are who you're going to be going on your retreats. People you love to work with. So again, you're laying the groundwork. in the beginning with working with your perfect client, getting clear on what you love. Some of you are still trying to work on your niche, and that's fine. It's totally fine. It's not saying since day one you need to know what your niche is. But at the same time, as hopefully you've been able to yoke, I love that word, that's what, the root word of yoga means, is to yoke, is that it's really getting you very clear on what you love so that you can truly reach your perfect audience. And so that's what these retreat experiences are. They're an opportunity to take your true tribe, your true following, the people that you've always wanted to connect with, and spend a week with them in paradise. Now, I'm not saying that it's all going to be, gummy bears and rainbows and butterflies. There's going to be shit that comes up. You're taking them deeper than they've ever been before. And I think it's important to honor this again. Now, that often, even though that can be tough to go through, is one of the most beautiful experiences when people truly open up and they start having these breakthroughs, and you're there as a part of it. It's really, really amazing when you see people growing. I mean, it's the way that in some ways, even though we're connected often through the internet or through the phone, I see each one of you growing, and it's one of the most beautiful experiences to be able to be a part of that. So just think about you doing it in person, in a beautiful, environment. So, I want to honor again that some of you might be, intimidated by this whole experience. I know that I led off with all these details and all these different things, and then I kind of abruptly at the end oh, where's the slide? And was like, hey, hallelujah, there's a Done For You retreat company. The reason that I did that is because, again, I wanted you to go through the training material, and I wanted you to see what's all involved, because you need to be taking on the student's perspective of what they have to go through, of signing up, getting a confirmation letter, of trying to set up with the travel company, and there's this thing involved, and, then going through, what is the best things to teach while you're there to really hold the space. So I'll end it there. I just highly recommend for those who have not gone on a retreat, at least a weekend retreat, even if you have, to go again. Because now you're going to have a different recognition of what is going on and how you might do some things differently, on that retreat. So I really hope you enjoyed this training, and I'll see you on the next.